whole 12 sessions of Enrich and the first 6 sessions of Excel, we have got ourselves to a much more elevated level of self-awareness, whether it is to do with our perceptions, whether it's to do with our mindsets, biases, negative thoughts, how these things happen, what are the parts of the brain, how do they get wired. So all of that we have done, and we have done some of the tools in terms of what are like 6-7 different tools which we can put to use. The later half of Excel is really what we are trying to do is, given that all of us are in leadership positions, is there a logical, structured way we can go about thinking each of these elements, which is the first one, which is pursuit of excellence. Today will be on what is called strategy and structure. And then we will do systems and processes, shared values, culture, and then finally leadership and connecting the dots. Now, when we use words like strategy, structure, systems, processes, shared values, and all that, there are very differential understanding in people in terms of what it exactly is. So the idea here is to really say what it is, and for us to provide a kind of a framework and a structure so that we are able to think of our school within that structure and say which are the areas which really need some improvement or changes or help. Right? So in terms of excellence domains, we talked about various domains. So last to last week, we went deeper into 2 of those. Right? What were those domains? The first one was individual excellence, which is how do you manage yourself and your approach to work. And the later part of Excel is entirely about work. It's not so much to do with our private lives. Private lives, we can always say this, what applies here will also apply to our private life, but it's more relevant to our life as an executive. Then interpersonal excellence. Interpersonal excellence is how effective are we when we are communicating, when we are managing conflicts and differences, and when we are a part of a team. Not necessarily running a team. When we are a part of a team, that's the right attitude to take when we are, even when you're running a team. Third one is about system processes, which is the operational excellence, which we'll talk about a lot more in the next session, which is how successfully and effectively do we execute. It's one thing to have a strategy, right? It's one thing to have goals. It's a completely different things to be able to actually execute on it, right? Like they say, talk is cheap. So strategy is very, very important, but it's a very important 10%, and 90% is really execution. But if you get our strategy wrong and our execution right, we will go down the wrong path really efficiently. So that is why strategy is very important. You have to get that piece perfectly right, but that's the 10, 15%. And the remaining 85% of any executive's life is about. Then finally, organizational and leadership excellence. And those are the different types of excellence. Just to recap, individual excellence, we talked about 4 different things. The first and foremost is about accountability and integrity. A very strong sense of saying it is because of me when things are not going all that well, and to be very, very responsible of to whatever role which we are performing, and performing it to the highest level of integrity in terms of what we say is what we mean, all those kinds of integrity. We are not really talking about integrity in the sense that we don't steal money and stuff like that. That's a much lower level integrity, which I'm sure none of us do from an organization, but it's more about those kinds of things, talking behind somebody's back and all those kinds, that kind of integrity. The second is about creativity and innovation, where we're able to provide direction, provide thoughts, provide ideas in a pragmatic and a creative fashion. The third one is we know who we are, which is the self-awareness. To a large extent, we understand ourselves. And finally, we are there when it comes to problem solving and decision making, and we are able to make it in a forthright manner, in a very, how do you put it, in a decisive manner. Then comes interpersonal excellence. Interpersonal excellence really is about 4 or 5 things. One is, how is our degree of collaboration and teamwork? The second one is critically important, conflict management. Right? In any team, it is very unlikely we find all people who agree on any point. Okay. So the art of the possible, which we talked about last time around, is very, very important when it comes to interpersonal excellence. It is very unlikely that even if our idea is the right idea, it is very unlikely that everybody is going to take to that particular idea immediately 100% with all enthusiasm and everything else. Okay, there are people who are going to push back. There are people who are going to accept it. There are people who think it's a lousy idea. All of that is going to happen. How do we manage that? And the art of the possible is about conflict management, and generally having the interpersonal smarts in terms of being able to work across levels, across people, across organizations as well, our general sense of interpersonal sparks, and finally, our ability to effectively communicate, both in terms of speaking, presenting, speaking and presenting. Operational excellence is about doing things right. Strategy is about deciding to do the right things. Right? So how do we do the right things? What is that we should do? How do we do a strategy? We are going to come to that. But doing the things right is about operational excellence, okay? Which is about process management, project management. It's about delegation, planning, prioritization, and deploying information technology as effectively as we can to make our processes more efficient. Okay. So whenever we talk about systems and processes, there is a bit of a misunderstanding that people immediately jump to thinking, okay, that means we have to buy a bunch of computers. And systems and processes is not about buying computers. When we come to that systems and process next week, we talk a lot more about it. It's not about computers. Computers are great enablers, but they are not the ones who create operational excellence in any organization. Right. And finally, organizational and leadership excellence, which we have seen most of it in the last few sessions, which is about our ability to lead change, ability to be resilient when chips are down, having a very strong sense of who's my customer and what do they want, because end of the day, they are the ones who are providing me with whatever I want out of my professional career, whether it is my money or my designation, or power, or promotion, or rewards. There's no customer, all of that is not coming to me. Our ability to effectively strategize, having a sense of organizational acumen, and finally, ability to build teams and managing and measuring work. Great. So that's a sort of a very rapid recap of last session. Now, we want to talk about what is called strategy and structure. Okay, these are very precise, specific words. Let me go back one step and give you a bit of a history about where it all started. But around about 1970, if I'm not mistaken, 1970, these two authors, okay, came together. I think they were ex-McKinsey people. McKinsey is a large consulting firm like BC, Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, Bain, 4 or 5 of these big consulting groups. These two guys came together and they went and did research in many well-run American companies. And what they tried to do was, what are the common qualities in best run companies in America? That's it, right? They went and found what are the best run qualities in best run companies. Okay, I'm sure we did speak about what is called Lasado Ratio some time back. Lasado Ratio is the ratio of positive emotions to negative emotions. And two people went and then created some, they went to various companies and found out how many words which are used in organizations are positive words and how much is negative words. And they divided the number of positive words divided by the number of negative words and came up with a ratio called the Lasado Ratio. So like this, there are lots of consultants who enter an organization and they understand the organization from a third-party viewpoint which gives them a very different kind of a vantage point as compared to any one of us who are a part of the organization, right? So they went and studied various well-run companies in America, I think 43 of them. Yeah. After selecting 43 companies from various industries, they examined the firm's practices very closely. Then they came up with a model. Okay. Now, it started off with 8 core principles and all that, and finally it morphed into what is called the McKinsey's. It's a very commonsensical kind of a model if we read it today. The fact of the matter is 2 things. Okay. In that time, in 1970s, these principles were not well known and definitely not properly documented. That was the first thing. The second amazing thing is, even today in 2021, when you go to any large organization, all major organizations at some time or the other deploy the McKinsey 7S model to reassess their firm's health. Now, a McKinsey 7S model is not necessarily something which is suited only for some large organizations and multinational organizations or any of those things. McKinsey 7S model is equally applicable to very, very small organizations. Okay, it might not be applicable necessarily to a kirana shop, for instance, but it's definitely applicable to medium-sized and small-sized organizations as well. And these organizations could be in any kind of field. They could be in the field of manufacturing. They could be a service industry. They could be an educational institution. And this works perfectly. So what we are going to try and do is, can we borrow some of those ideas from the McKinsey 7S model, or understand what the McKinsey 7S model is, so that we can use some of those ideas and apply it to our own educational institution, our own school. So this is McKinsey 7S model. Right at the center sits the culture of an organization. The culture of an organization, also called the shared values, it sits right in the center. Okay. When you go to an organization or any organization, you go to a darshini. Okay. My favorite example, I keep coming back to a darshini. You go to a darshini, you know for a fact, okay, that the idli, the vada you get there is reasonably fresh. You know the spoons have been cleaned and dipped in hot water. You know the service will be really fast. You know the person in the counter will always have the change. Even if you eat for 103 rupees and give 500 rupees, the person will have change. Now, these are things which are at the core of any darshini. So there is a certain culture, there is a certain expectation, there is a certain behavior, there is a certain fuzzy thing. If I were to ask you, what is a darshini, you'll be immediately able to say one of these points. Now, that is culture. Okay, culture is what creates an organizational brand, truly, not the advertisement organization brand, as to who are we. That part is the culture. Now, around the culture, what are called the 3 hard S's and the 3 soft S's. The 3 hard S's are strategy, structure, and systems. Strategy is of 2 parts. One is a goal, which is called a strategic intent. And then how do we go to that goal is called the strategy, okay, which is developing a roadmap. Strategy is an entirely mental exercise with a group of people who are the senior manager and your team meeting and team people and all that. It's an entirely mental process of deciding what is that we should do. Structure is who will do it, what will each person do, how will the roles get divided, how will the responsibilities get divided. Sorry, what will the roles be? How will the responsibilities get divided is about the structure. Systems is about how do we measure, how do we monitor, how do we run that operation, what are the different things, how do we plan, how do we do, how do we check, how do we act, all of that is systems. Then the 3 soft ones, which is, as you can see, strategy, structure, and systems, we didn't feel very human about it because it's very hard. Those are called the hard S's. The other 3 are the soft S's, which is about what is the capability I have as an organization. Okay, collective capability as an organization. Do I have the capability to be able to deliver towards a certain goal, Or do I need to upskill myself? Do I have to add more skill to my organization? That's about skills. Then about the people. What are the kind of quality of people? What are the kind of vibes which we have? Okay. What are the kind of politics which is there? What are the camaraderie which is there? The other side of it. So all of that belongs to staff. And finally, the last one is really about the style in terms of, are we more directive? Are we more democratic? Are we autocratic? Are we, how do we generate opinion? How does an organization function? About style. So today we're going to focus on just two, which is strategy and structure. Okay, these three are the hard S's, so those are the yellows. What we're going to focus on is really strategy and structure. First, strategy. In strategy, there are two parts to it. The first one is what is called a strategic intent. A strategic intent is really like a goal. But why don't we then call it a goal? The reason we don't call it a goal is because a strategic intent is what is called a big, hairy, audacious goal. It is a goal which has to have a sense of unrealisticness, there is no such word, about it. Okay, so it has to have what they call as a gulp factor. When you hear it, it should sound a tad foolish. Okay, that is what is called a strategic intent. Big, hairy, audacious goal, that's what BHAG is. Now, when developing a strategic intent, when developing any goal, the easy path for anybody to take is to think about a certain situation incrementally from a current point of departure. Okay, I'll tell you, I'll give you a couple of examples of that. Okay, now let us say the pass percentage which we are getting in our 10th grade is 80%. And in terms of school toppers or something like that, top academic excellence, we have maybe 10% of our school which is going to professional colleges or some such thing. And then we say, no, this 10% has to go to 12 or 13, and this 80% pass has to go to 85. Okay, so but we don't really think of it as saying, okay, right now we are sitting in 2021. In 2026, what will the educational landscape be like in the particular space in which I'm operating? That is called developing a point of view of the future. Developing a point of view of the future is a very strong leadership trait. So we have to be able to imagine in 2026, what will education look like? Will it be a chalk and talk? Will it be a classroom online, offline interaction? Will it be online? Will it be blended? Will it be having subjects which are separated out in a certain way? Will the level of practicals and other activities be the same? Will we be bringing in and integrating various tools like, whether it's YouTube videos and stuff like that, which will all become a part of a classroom? All classrooms, will they become smart classrooms? What will the children be? What are the expectations from children? What will the parents be expecting? What kind of a fee structure might or might not be there at that point? It's a whole set of things we are imagining about when? 2026, that's 5 years out. We can come back and ask the question, how the hell do we know? You know what? We are in the position to answer the question, however right or wrong we are. There is nobody else who's going to answer the question, and answering the question is very important. And therefore, we have to bear that cross, so to speak, of carrying that burden and ensuring we are able to imagine that future. Once we have imagined the future, we have to be able to place ourselves in the future and say, in 5 years' time, this is what future is going to look like. And in that scenery, my school is going to be that school. Okay. Now I have a very clear imagination of the future and where my school is placed in that future. And that's called developing a point of view of the future and knowing what is our point of arrival. Once we have a point of arrival, we already know what is our point of departure. Once we have a point of arrival and a point of departure, which is defined, strategy is how do we go there? Okay. So this is about strategic intent or setting that slightly unrealistic goal. Now, what is strategy? First and foremost, the one thing strategy is not. It is not a very long catch-all statement. It is not to impress anybody. It is not for us to print it on a piece of paper or on a beautiful sheet and stick it all over our organization. It is not something like this. To be the most respected school with happy children, world-class infrastructure, best academic records, at the most affordable fees, in the most inclusive manner. Doesn't happen. We can write all this. I can write another 3 more things to it also. Sometimes, happy teachers are also thrown in there. But that's like, when we drive in the highway, sometimes we have these boards, okay, for restaurants, which will say North, South, Chinese, Chettinad, veg and non-veg family restaurant bar attached. That's like saying basically anybody who is going on that road, please turn here, you will get what you want. It doesn't quite work like that. As you know, restaurant business quite doesn't work like when you say North, South, Chinese, Chettinad, veg and non-veg. I'm going for a certain experience, and the strategy has to very clearly define what that is. This kind of a thing, which is to be the most respected school with happy children, world-class infrastructure, best academic records, at the most affordable fees, in the most inclusive manner with happy teachers, is like saying, I don't know what the hell I want to do. This is not about having a lofty goal. This is about a very confused mind. Okay, we have to be precise in terms of saying, if I'm going to get something, I have to necessarily give something up. And if that is a choice I have to make, how am I going to make that choice? How much am I willing to give up? What am I going to give up? And what is that I'm going to focus on, and where am I going to go? And that is what strategy is all about. Okay, this is not an exhaustive list of strategies, but I'll give you a couple of examples of strategies, which is to be able to enable, say, top-up classes for all subjects in the evening for 1 hour, where 20% of my current kids are going to be a part of it. And by doing this, I want to improve my performance by at least 15 marks. So there is a goal. There is a certain how am I going to achieve that, which is embedded within that. There is a bit of a description, and the description is reasonably watertight. It is not very loose. Okay. So here teachers have to stay back, and that would mean that they are going to suffer on their quality of life. Yeah, maybe it will happen. Right. What about something else? Other 80% of the kids, don't they also need some kind of a top-up class from time to time in at least one subject? Why are you focusing on only 20% of the kids? Yeah, that's a choice I'm taking. All right. So sometimes we have to understand that there are choices I'm taking. There is always something which is, in words, it's perfect in every sense, but in action, it cannot happen. And therefore, I have to make those choices. Another example is to be able to say, I have to improve the infrastructure of my school, but I want to set up 3 science labs that are state of the art and more aligned with the current curriculum, which is there. Now, that's a very specific strategy. The reason why we want a specific strategy is now we can develop a plan with the strategy. If I were to say, okay, this earlier statement, I don't know how to develop a plan. Where do I start? Where do I go? What the hell do I do? I have no idea. Whereas if I have this to improve infrastructure, set up 3 science labs that are state of the art. So I know it is about science labs I need to set up. I have to find out what are the state of the art. Then I know which direction to go and research. Something which is aligned with the curriculum. So I will have a sense of what is my point of departure. Where is my science lab looking like right now? I'll have a sense of what does my science lab have to look like. If I have to go from there to here, what are the various steps I need to follow, and who will do it? How much resources will be required for doing that? What kind of timelines will it take for me to be able to do that? How will I measure and monitor that? Okay, when will I be able to say it has been a success or not a success? All of that gets, everything below the line becomes crystal clear if a strategy is clear. If our strategy is a confused one, everything below the line is confused. Everything below the line, whether it is our structure, whether it is our systems and processes, our motivational levels of our people, our skills, everything will become confused. Okay, so that is as far as an example of strategy is concerned. Right. Now, I'm going to take a 1 or 2 minute pause here, and I want you to come up and tell me, it doesn't have to be something which you are actually thinking of, but can you think of a strategic intent for your school and a couple of strategies for your school? Once we do this small exercise, you can even type it on your chat. Once we do that, we will go to structure afterwards. So is my question clear? My question is, I want you to just write out any strategic intent which comes to your mind. Okay. Like I said, it's just a starting point. Somewhere we want to just write down a strategic intent and a couple of strategies for your school. Okay, so we have nothing at this moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to request you to just remember or take down the sentence, take a screenshot or whatever. And at the end, I'll come back and ask this question along with a question in structure. Right. Now, we have some sense of what is a strategic intent, which is the goal, but unrealistic somewhat. And what is the strategy? Which is not a catch-all statement. It has to be a lot more precise than a detail saying that I want to have a desk or something. That's a detail. Okay, that is not chunkier than that. It should be fully defined. Right. Structure. Structure essentially outlines how various activities are directed to get to a goal. So when many of us think about a structure, we think of it as saying, who's the lowest level, who's the next level, who's the higher level, who's the boss, and all of that. That's how it looks like. That's what the structure looks like. But it's really about saying how are the various activities getting directed to get to our strategic intent. So it's therefore very important that every well-defined role, and a well role is about defining what will you do or what are the things which are outside of your role. Okay, defining roles and roles in a good structure.
So could you repeat it again? We lost you for a few seconds.
Sure, Vidya. Which point onwards did you lose?
Before you started this, I mean, just when you started the structure, we lost you.
Okay. Right. So when we say structure, while it looks like sometimes, these are the people at the lowest level, these are the people who are heads of this department, head of middle school, head of primary school, head of the school, and it looks like an organizational diagram, and that's an organizational chart or a diagram anyway, but that's not about the structure. Okay, that's how the product looks like. But the reason why a final product looks like that is because structure outlines how various activities are directed to get to a goal. So we define two things in a structure. we have to very clearly define what is that we to be doing and what are the things where inside of that and where is the boundary. Okay, that is the second thing in defining a structure. The third thing about a structure is all decision making in a structure. Should a good effective structure is where all decision making goes to as low a level as possible. If I have to end up taking every single decision and every single tiny decision in an organization, then it is not a functioning structure. So whenever we say that every small thing, I have to get involved in this, that just simply means that we have not been able to deliver the strategy of our organization through an effective usage will that mean that all decision will be taken as per happen in any organization? It will not happen exactly as we want. Okay, that's as low a level as possible. In fact, McKinsey itself came up with another concept which is called MEES. Okay, MEES simply stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So what we want a good functioning organization to be able to do is that I am not doing what you're doing and you are not doing what I'm doing, but between you and I, we are collectively doing all the 100%. So we are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. A good functioning structure is where there is no overlap of work as to one person does it and the other person also does something like that. Okay. And the second thing is there are times when something falls between the stools and we come back and say, what happened there? This had to be done because it was not well defined as to whose role and whose role boundary and what is the structure, what is that we are going to be doing along that. And important that we get that part of it. The last point is often I thought I'll spend half a minute explaining what a word. See, what do we have? We have a school, our children, the various stakeholders. The management is a stakeholder, which is looking at the school, the image of the school.
Can you talk without the video?
And the financial stakeholders, parents. Okay. Third set of stakeholders, which is our own staff, whole thing laid out. Now, how? Okay, sure.
Ramesh.
We lost
Mary,
the entire structure.
Ramesh, we just have lost you for the last several minutes. I was just waiting. Is it just me or for everybody else? For me, after me's, I completely lost you because couldn't hear anything.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Then it's no problem. If you heard up to me's, it's great. Have you heard up to me's?
Yes, sir. We've heard up to me's.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do one thing. I'm not going to put
no, even before that, I think 2-3 minutes we lost. Even before that.
No, up to me's we could all hear.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. We have only another 4 or 5 slides. What I will do is I will not put it on the full screen. Vidya, I want to request you to put a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on whether you can hear or not. Okay, I'll
Sure,
go
sir.
through. Yeah. And use your left hand. I can't see your right. You're not on the camera, or you have to move your camera a bit. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I will keep it in this itself, so where you will actually end up seeing yourself, but that's fine. I mean, I've just put that. Yeah, I wanted to spend just
We lost you again.
On what is called vertical.
I can't hear you, Ramesh.
We lost you again.
Because we hear that.
Ramesh,
We lost you once again.
Yeah, we're not able to hear anything. It's just that dragging.
Oh, God. Hmm. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, it's clear now.
Maybe would
So, you want me to share the screen?
Oh, he's left the meeting. I think he'll join again.
Oh. Actually, it was clear when he was telling that please raise your hand. And after that,
I think he'll join again. That will be slightly better.
yeah, I
A time
think
to, sometimes that works.
I'll try sharing the screen. I think he might log in from phone.
Yes, that would be better, I
Yeah.
guess.
I'll tell him that.
Yeah, if you share the screen, Mary, it may be helpful.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, he's joining.
Yeah, can you hear now? Okay, cool.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think it'll be better if you switch off the video. Probably it'll help if that works.
Let me. Yes. I'll switch off the video. Yeah. Let me share my screen. Mary, keep your
Yep.
presentation ready. I will ask you at any time, not now.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We went up to the concept of me's. Just a few other things I wanted to talk about in structure is often we hear these words verticals and horizontals. It's not very well understood as to, somebody will come and throw it around like a jargon and say, I'm a part of this vertical or that vertical or something like that. And rarely people say a horizontal. They somehow think horizontal is worse than a vertical. So all those confusions are there in terms of what these things are. Okay. So now what we know is that when we talk about a school, there are a whole set of children who are there in different classes and they're learning different subjects, right? So if you were to think of it like a grid, then like a timetable also, I mean, it's not exactly a timetable. If you want to think of it like a grid, there is class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, class 5, class 6, all the way to class 12. And then horizontally, we will be writing English, chemistry, physics, math, biology, physical education, and so on. Now, somebody might be responsible for things which are flowing vertically, somebody who could be a head of a primary school, somebody who's the head of a secondary school, because those are things which are flowing vertically. But sometimes what you need is you want horizontal skills And horizontal skills is somebody who can ensure that physics across primary, secondary, and higher secondary and college level is being effectively done, and labs and the way of pedagogy and everything is integrated. Somebody is looking at it completely horizontally. Okay, that's one way to think of which is vertical and which is horizontal. Now that's completely a choice. Okay, if you take an organization like Unilever could very well be thinking of shampoos being one vertical. It can think of soaps as being another vertical. It can think of fast food or something as a third vertical, toiletries as a fourth vertical, and horizontally it could think of saying Europe as one horizontal, Africa as another horizontal, Asia, India as another horizontal. But Unilever doesn't. It thinks of the verticals as the geography. It thinks of India as the vertical, and that is the main focus. And horizontally, all these products are flowing into it. So we can also structure where we think of it as saying, I want to basically think of my organization or my school as a super solid science school. And I want to be creating verticals, which is a strong vertical on physics, chemistry, and biology. Okay, and of course, mathematics. And the other verticals could be a tad weaker. We might say that that is also, of course, everything is important in life, but I'm making choices. And I'm saying I'm going to create a super solid science school. Okay, and that is what I'm going to focus on. And horizontally, middle school, whether it's primary or middle school or whatever it is, those are all my horizontals which are running. So that is really what is meant by, so that I develop a structure in a way depending on how my strategy flows. What did I say as a simple strategy here? I said, my strategic intent in this little sentence was, I want my school to be one of the best science schools in the state or the country or whatever it is. If that is the case, then I have to make my subjects as being the vertical. So science has to become a vertical. And in that, horizontally, the primary school comes in, other schools, secondary school, and the higher secondary school, and everything else comes in. Okay, so it's therefore very important we flow the structure from the strategic intent and the strategy. Okay, there are a certain set of general do's and don'ts about a structure. One, we have to keep a structure clean and simple. Okay, it should not be a very messy structure. Half the time we don't know who's supposed to do a certain job. A thinks B will do it, B thinks C will do it, C thinks A will do it, and the boss doesn't know who's responsible for it and generally calls everybody and shouts. Okay, because we don't know who's exactly responsible for what it is. So having good, clean structures is quite important. Second, do not create unnecessary roles with a bulky structure which leads to bureaucracy. Sometimes it's very tempting to create these patchwork ideas. Okay, somebody is coming a little late to school, we create one system for that and say that everybody will now punch and put some fingerprint or something like that. Somebody will take one register and run to some corner. They will have 3 copies of it. And somebody has to monitor it, and that person doesn't know what to. Finally, it will all come to some headmistress and all that. And what can she manage? I mean, it has to be delegated much below her level. I mean, checking whether somebody has come into school or not is definitely not at the capability level of the head of a school. If you have to do it, that means our structure is not working. Third is there is a general thumb rule on what is called a span of control. How many people are directly talking to you and reporting to you, and how many people you're responsible for? The first thing is you have to destroy a structure wherever you see what is called an I formation. A has one person he or she is reporting to, and that person has nobody else other than that A reporting to him or her. Okay, you have to break it down, which is called an I formation, which is just a straight line. There is no need for a structure. The second thing is a structure should not have too many people reporting into it. If you have 10 and 12 people reporting into you, chances are you can't do a good job of it. Okay, you normally should not have more than 7 or 8 people reporting into any part of your structure. Direct reports cannot be more than 7 or 8 people. These are general thumb rules. Okay, there have been situations I know where 12 or 13 people have reported into the same structure. but those are basically, heads of schools and stuff like that. I mean, so if DPS were to open 5 other schools under the same management, okay, all the headmistresses can be reporting into that structure, but they are CEOs by their own right? I mean, so they don't need to be reporting on a daily basis in terms of, sir, what do we do, ma'am, what do we do? It's not that kind of a reporting relationship. So reporting relationship usually should not be more than 8 people, 7 or 8 people. That's a general do's and don'ts. Last couple of points, don't create redundant structures, because sometimes there is an enormous temptation. Somebody whom we really like in the organization will come and say, no, I'm quite pissed off with this whole idea, I'm going to leave and go. Then we sit down and say, what do we do? What can we do to keep you back and all that? You have the whole thing, and finally we'll create one unnecessary part of a structure and say, okay, this person will be the general oversighting, coordinating, and some complicated name also we will give for that particular role, and then create one structure out there. Okay, now that structure is a what? Okay, WART. It's a what. You should not create those kinds of things to accommodate personal ambitions. Finally, every once in a while, please do a complete rethink of the structure. Don't think incrementally. Just like in strategy, we said, go sit under a tree if you like into some corner and then imagine what the world will look like in 2026, because nobody else is doing that imagination for you. And you are mandated to do that as a head of school. Okay, our mandate is not to just run the operations as efficiently as we can. Our mandate is leadership. If our mandate is leadership, we have to know where the hell this organization is going. And for that, I need to have an idea of what the world will look like in 5 years. Similarly, whenever your strategy changes, please rethink your entire structure in terms of, what are the things I need to keep as verticals, what are the things I need to have as my horizontals, and everything, a complete rethink of the whole thing. Okay, which brings me to one more little bubble, which is my first bubble was, could you write down a strategic intent and 1 or 2 strategies? If we can't, it's okay. And similarly, this is another bubble. What I will do is I'll take both these bubbles and post it in the WhatsApp group. I would like you to really go back and spend some quality time, at least half an hour, 45 minutes, of thinking of a strategic intent and a strategy, and also to think of 2 areas. One, where we need to be delegating more, and 2, where the span is too wide in some part of our organization. Many times when you come back and say there's not enough time to do this and that, we have to come back and check, are we spanning ourselves too thin? Okay, because you should remember one thing. I mean, having a span of control like 10 or 12 people talking to us, it's not a matter of pride. We can't look after 12 people, right? Because we have a very, very important role as the boss of a person. You can't be the boss of 12 people. If you're a boss of 12 people, you're not the boss of any of them, because you can't deliver on that role. What is the point in not being able to deliver on that role? And then therefore, what it really becomes is, it becomes our own personal pride of saying, oh, you have 7 people, I have 12 people reporting to me. Okay, that's very unfair. Okay, to the people who are reporting into our structure, we cannot have more than 6 or 7 people reporting into our structure. So we have to break the structure. There are span breakers and all that. It's very straightforward. I mean, these are not complicated things. Once we know what is that we need to do. All right. Okay, that's all I have at this moment. If there are any questions, we can take it now, or we can take it right at the end. To Shubha's case.
I have a question.
Yes, Ida.
When you talk